The Occupy movement is the force that will revitalize traditional Christianity in the United States or signal its moral, social, and political irrelevance. The mainstream church, battered by declining numbers and a failure to defiantly condemn the crimes and cruelty of the corporate state, as well as a refusal to vigorously attack the charlatans of the Christian right, whose misuse of the gospel to champion unfettered capitalism, bigotry, and imperialism is heretical, has become a marginal force in the life of most Americans, especially the young. Outside the doors of churches, many of which have trouble filling a quarter of the pews on Sundays, struggles a movement driven largely by young men and women, which has as its official credo the Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall possess the earth. Blessed are they who hunger and thirst for justice, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons and daughters of God. Blessed are they who suffer persecution for justice' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. It was the church in Latin America, especially in Central America and Augusto Pinochet's Chile, which provided the physical space, moral support, and direction for the opposition to dictatorship. It was the church in East Germany that organized the peaceful opposition marches in Leipzig that would bring down the communist regime in that country. It was the church in Czechoslovakia and its 90-year-old cardinal that blessed and defended the Velvet Revolution. It was the church, and especially the African American church, that made possible the civil rights movement. And it is the church, especially Trinity Church in New York City, with its open park at Canal and 6th Avenue, which can make manifest its commitment to the gospel and nonviolent social change by permitting the occupied movement to use this empty space. Just as churches in other cities that hold unused physical space have a moral imperative to turn them over to the Occupy movements. If this nonviolent movement fails, it will eventually be replaced by one that will employ violence. And if it fails, it will fail in part because good men and women, especially those in the church, did nothing. Where is the church now? Where are the clergy? Why do so many church doors remain shut? Why do so many churches refuse to carry out the central mandate of the Christian gospel and lift up the cross? Someday they are going to have to answer the question, where were you when they crucified my Lord? Let me tell you, on this first Sunday in Advent, when we celebrate hope, when we remember in the church how Mary and Joseph left Nazareth for Bethlehem, why I am in Liberty Square. I am here because I have tried, however imperfectly, to live by the radical message of the gospel. I am here because I know that it is not what we say or profess, but what we do. I am here because I have seen in my many years overseas as a foreign correspondent that great men and women of moral probity arise in all cultures and all religions to fight the oppressor on behalf of the oppressed. I am here because I have seen that it is possible to be a Jew, a Buddhist, a Muslim, a Christian, a Hindu, or an atheist, and carry the cross. The words are different, but the self-sacrifice and thirst for justice are the same. And these men and women who may not profess what I profess or believe what I believe are my brothers and sisters, and I stand with them honoring and respecting our differences and finding hope and strength and love in our common commitment. At times like these, I hear the voices of the saints who went before us, the suffragist Susan B. Anthony, who announced that resistance to tyranny is obedience to God. And the suffragist Elizabeth Cady Stanton, who said, "The moment we begin to fear the opinions of others and hesitate to tell the truth that is in us, and from motives of policy are silent when we should speak, the divine floods of light and life no longer flow into our souls." Or Henry David Thoreau, who told us we should be men and women first and subjects afterward, that we should cultivate a respect not for the law, but for what is right. And Frederick Douglass, who warned us, "Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. Find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you have found out the exact measure of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them. And these will continue till they are resisted with either words or blows or both. The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress." And the great 19th century populist Mary Elizabeth Lease, who thundered, "Wall Street owns the country. It is no longer a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, but a government of Wall Street, by Wall Street, and for Wall Street. The great common people of this country are slaves, and monopoly is the master." And General Smedley Butler, who said that after 33 years and 4 months in the Marine Corps, he had come to understand that he had been nothing more than a gangster for capitalism, making Mexico safe for American oil interests, making Haiti and Cuba safe for banks, and pacifying the Dominican Republic for sugar companies. War, he said, is a racket in which newly dominated countries are exploited by the financial elites in Wall Street, while the citizens foot the bill and sacrifice their young men and women on the battlefield for corporate greed. Or Eugene V. Debs, the socialist presidential candidate who in 1912 pulled almost 1 million votes, or 6%, and who was sent to prison by Woodrow Wilson for opposing the First World War, and who told the world, "While there is a lower class, I am in it. And while there is a criminal element, I am of it. And while there is a soul in prison, I am not free." And Rabbi Abraham Heschel, who when he was criticized for walking with Martin Luther King on the Sabbath in Selma, answered, "I pray with my feet." And who quoted Samuel Johnson, who said, "The opposite of good is not evil. The opposite of good is indifference." And Rosa Parks, who defied the segregated bus system and said, "The only tired I was tired of giving in." And Philip Berrigan, who said, "If enough Christians follow the gospel, they can bring any state to its knees." And the poet Langston Hughes, who wrote, "What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotted meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode?" And Martin Luther King, who said, "On some positions, cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it politic? Vanity asks the question, is it popular? And there comes a time when a true follower of Jesus Christ must take a stand that's neither safe nor politic nor popular, but he must take a stand because it is right." Where were you when they crucified my Lord? Were you there to halt the genocide of Native Americans? Were you there when Sitting Bull died on the cross? Were you there to halt the enslavement of African Americans? Were you there to halt the mobs that terrorized black men and women and even children with lynching during Jim Crow? Were you there when they persecuted union organizers and Joe Hill died on the cross? Were you there to halt the incarceration of Japanese Americans in World War II? Were you there to halt Bull Connor's dogs as they were unleashed on civil rights marchers in Birmingham? Were you there when Martin Luther King died upon the cross? Were you there when Malcolm X died upon the cross? Were you there to halt the hate crimes, discrimination, and violence against gays, lesbians, bisexuals, and those who are transgender? Were you there when Matthew Shepard died on the cross? Were you there to halt the abuse and at times enslavement of workers in the farmlands in this country? Were you there to halt the murder of hundreds of thousands of innocent Vietnamese during the war in Vietnam and hundreds of thousands of Muslims in Iraq and Afghanistan? Were you there to halt Israel's saturation bombing of Lebanon and Gaza? Were you there when Rachel Corrie died on the cross? Were you there to halt the corporate forces that have left working men and women and the poor in this country bereft of sustainable income, hope, and dignity? Were you there to share your food with your neighbor in Liberty Square? Were you there to become homeless with them? Where were you when they crucified my Lord? I know where I was, here with you.